My name is Sylvia Redding. I'm 69 years old and I live in Rockford, Illinois. Last Sunday of June, I had 9 people at my table. My son Bradley slid a stack of papers across it past my grandson's water glass. He told me to sign it all over now while I was still around to watch them enjoy it. My daughter-in-law smiled, not a nervous smile, the other kind. I set down my fork. For 2 seconds, I could not speak. There was a woman parked at the curb outside my house in a silver Camry with a notary stamp on the dashboard. My son had scheduled that. He had scheduled all of it. But the thing that mattered most was not on my table at all. It was something Bradley had already signed 11 weeks earlier in a county office he probably never thought about again. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, where we tell the ones about mothers who got counted out early. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I worked for the Rock River Trades Pension Fund. 33 years. I started May 21st, 1979. I was 22. They hired me as a benefit clerk at $4.15 an hour, and my whole job was typing names and hour banks into a machine the size of a chest freezer. Sheet metal workers, roofers, 5 counties, men who came to the window with their hands still gray from the job. By the time I left, I was the plan administrator. I signed the checks. I answered to a board of trustees, half union and half contractors, and they argued about everything except one thing. That one thing was my actual job. People think a pension office pays out money. It does. But most days what I did was tell people no. A man wants to sign his monthly benefit over to somebody, a finance company, a son-in-law, a church, a woman going through something hard. They come to the counter with a form and a pen and a plan, and they are not wrong about needing the money, and the answer is still no. I said it 4,000 times if I said it once. I retired June 29, 2012 under our 30 and out rule. 55 years old with 33 years of service, which sounds young until you remember I started before I could legally rent a car. My benefit is $3,412.60 a month. It has never gone up. It never will. My family always described my career the same way. Mom does paperwork at the fund. That's what they told people at weddings. Paperwork. I never corrected them. I liked being underestimated. It's restful. I just did not expect the 4,001st no to happen at my own dining room table. I bought the house on Bildall Street in August of 1988, $52,900, and I thought I would never sleep again. Ray was still with me then. He drove a delivery route for a bakery supply outfit, and he died in March of 2009 in a chair by the window he had been meaning to reseal. The house has a dining room that is much too big for one person. That was the point. Last Sunday of every month I cook. It started when the kids were small and it never stopped. Delphine drives down from Madison when her shifts let her. Bradley lives 11 minutes away and comes every single time, which I used to be proud of. Now here is a small thing you will need later. In September of 1979, 4 months into that clerk job, I took my second paycheck and bought a set of Oneida flatware. Service for 8. $39.95 at a store on 7th Street that has been a tire shop since 1996. My mother thought it was foolish. I was 22 and I wanted a drawer that looked like a grown woman lived there. I still use it every Sunday. One of the salad forks has a bent left tine. It does not lie flat. It clicks against the plate when you set it down. I know exactly how it got that way, and I will tell you when it matters. For 39 years, that fork has gone at my own place. The drawer only holds 8, and I am not going to hand a guest the crooked one. That is the fork I set down on the 28th of June. You will hear about it again. The other thing I own is a duplex. 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street. Brick, 2 units, a shared porch with a rail, Ray rebuilt twice. I bought it March 18, 1994 for $41,500 with $9,300 down. Everyone told me a woman with 2 kids had no business being a landlord. I ran the numbers on a legal pad at this table and the numbers said otherwise. I paid it off in March of 2019. I remember because I called Delphine and she cried, and I did not. Perry Lindquist has rented 1418 for 9 years. He is 62, retired off a press at a printing house on Harrison Avenue, and he pays $815 on the first of the month without me ever asking. The Ocampo family has 1420 at 890. 2 kids, a beagle, and a trampoline I pretend not to see. Perry grows rhubarb along the back fence line. 6 plants. He started them the second spring he lived there because his mother had grown it, and he missed the smell of it cooking. Every Sunday from May to July, I make a rhubarb pie out of Perry's fence. That pie ends up on this table for a reason. Keep it in your head. In April, Perry called me about something small. Some men had been in the yard with a tape and a laser measure, walking the foundation line. He assumed they were county, assessor maybe. He asked if I was thinking about selling. I told him no. I said it like it was a silly question because at the time it was one. That building paid for 2 furnaces, a roof, and Delphine's last semester. That was April. I want you to remember that too. In March of 1991, a man named Delmar Fitch came to my counter. He was 64, roofer, 41 years and hands like tree bark. Tuesday the 12th. I remember the day because we had a board meeting that night and I had worn shoes I hated. Mr. Fitch had a form in a manila envelope and a very calm plan. A finance company on the west side Bluff City had offered him $6,000 cash. All he had to do was sign over 60 months of his pension, 5 years of checks straight to them. He had already spent part of it in his head, a furnace, his daughter's car. I had to tell him no, it was not policy. Federal law says a pension like his cannot be assigned or pledged to anyone, and the plan cannot honor a document that tries. I explained it twice. He asked me who I thought I was. Then he put his head down on the counter and cried, and I stood there with my hands flat on the laminate and let him. He was the 3rd one that year. 2 weeks later, the trustees asked me to write a warning. Plain words top of the back page of our change of payee form so people would read it before a stranger got a pen into their hand. Fund Form 7A, revised March 1991. The back page prints on pale pink stock so that nobody skips it. Paragraph 4 is mine. It took me 2 days to get it short enough. I wrote it at a card table in the file room because there was nowhere else quiet. Nobody put my name on it. Nobody ever does on the back page of a form. I could not have quoted it to you last spring. 35 years is a long time. I can quote it now. My son is 44. Bradley runs a company called Redding Property Solutions out of a white pickup with a decal peeling at the corner. He manages units for 2 landlords, does turnovers, and buys the kind of houses that come with a story attached. He is good with his hands. He is good with people for about 90 seconds. If you want the whole thing, you have to start at my kitchen table on Sunday, August 17, 2003. He was 21. He had lost his scholarship at Northern Illinois after failing 2 courses in the spring, and the balance for his last year was $8,740. He came home and laid it out like a proposal. Ray was there. Delphine was there home from nursing school eating cereal at 11 in the morning. Bradley said I could just take it out of the pension. I told him that is not how it works. I told him you cannot pull money out of a defined benefit plan the way you pull it out of a coffee can. And then I said the sentence he has repeated back to me at 3 separate holidays since. I said, I'm not touching the pension. He did not yell. He put his bowl in the sink and went and got a job at a tire warehouse on Kishwaukee Street, 4 blocks from a building I had already owned for 9 years. He never went back to school. At his 30th birthday in 2012, he had 2 beers in him, and he said it out loud to his sister. She told me the next day. He said she had the money the whole time. She just likes being the one who decides. 23 years later, he was still adding that up. Rhiannon is 41. She married Bradley in 2009, 4 months after Ray died, and she wore her mother's earrings and cried in all the right places. She manages the front office of a dental practice on Alpine Road. She remembers everyone's birthday. She sends cards. When Josie was small, Rhiannon made me a photo calendar every Christmas for 6 years, and I still have all 6 in the hall closet. I'm telling you the good parts because they are real. In November of 2018, I had my right hip replaced. I was 61. Delphine could not get the time off, so Rhiannon drove me. 12 physical therapy appointments between December and March in an Illinois winter, in a car with a heater that took 11 minutes to warm up. She never once made me feel like a chore. At intake before the surgery, a nurse went through my forms behind a curtain. Power of attorney, healthcare agent, emergency contact, all three said Delphine Redding Novak. The nurse asked if anyone else should be listed. I said my son's wife isn't on any of the paperwork. I meant it as a fact. It was a fact. Rhiannon was standing 4 feet away with my coat over her arm on the other side of a curtain that stops sound about as well as a shower cap. She never mentioned it. Not once in 7.5 years. She drove me to the next appointment 4 days later and stopped for a milkshake on the way home. She just started keeping score. Quietly. The way people do when they have decided the game is rigged and they are going to play it anyway. It took me until this June to learn that she heard me. She is the one who told me. Sunday lunch, April 26th, 9 at the table, which was new. Rhiannon's parents came Dale and Charlene Traffagan first time all year. Dale is 73 and drove a semi for 26 years. Charlene is 70. They live up in McChesney Park in a ranch house with a flagpole in the yard. I made ham scallop potatoes and the first rhubarb pie of the season. It went fine until the plates were half empty. Charlene said so. It's $3,400 a month. That's a lot more than Dale gets. I did not answer right away. I was doing arithmetic of a different kind. Nobody at that table had ever been told my benefit amount. Not Bradley, not Delphine. It is not a secret exactly. It is simply not dinner conversation. Then Rhiannon asked her question. She asked it sweetly with her fork down, the way you ask somebody about a vacation. She said, "When you pass, where does that go?" The table went quiet in that specific way. Josie stopped chewing. Trevor, who is 11, asked what pass meant, and his father told him to eat. So I answered like I was still behind the counter. I said a single life annuity ends when the participant does. There is no account. There is no balance. There is nothing to leave anybody. Charlene said, "Well, that doesn't seem right." Dale said that's how they get you. He said it to his plate, not to me. I said the fund has paid me every month for 13 years without one late check, and that seemed like the opposite of getting me. Nobody picked that up. And here's the part I keep coming back to. Bradley did not look at me. He looked down the table at his father-in-law. Dale gave him one small nod, like a man confirming a load was strapped. That nod sent me back 4 months. Christmas Day 2025. My kitchen, everybody threw it, coats piled on the bed. The fund mails retirees a newsletter twice a year. 4 pages terrible clip art, a column from the trustees, and a table in the back with sample monthly amounts by years of service. Mine had come the week before. I had left it on the counter under the fruit bowl. Charlene was in my kitchen for 20 minutes that afternoon drying glasses. I remember thanking her for it. Josie told me the rest on the last night of May, and I will get there properly, but the short version is this. Charlene took that newsletter out onto the back steps with Rhiannon and did the arithmetic out loud. 33 years of service. She found the line. She said $3,400 a month and it dies with her. Josie was 15 and standing in the doorway with a garbage bag, and neither of them looked up. Rhiannon said so. What happens to it? Charlene said nothing. That's the problem. I want to be fair to her. Charlene never had a pension. She waited tables on North 2nd for 19 years and got a gold pin. When she looks at my life, she does not see 33 years of work. She sees a woman who got a number. I called Delphine that Sunday night in April after everyone left. I told her about the question at the table. I told her about the nod. My daughter is an ICU nurse. She has no patience for a long wind-up. She said so. Call your son and ask him what he is planning. I said I wanted to know more first. I said I wanted to be sure before I accused anybody of anything. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Mom, you're not being careful. You're hiding behind a file." Perry called me on Wednesday, April 29th. He said, I don't want to be a pest, but there were people in the yard again, 3 of them this time. A man with a clipboard, a younger one with a laser measure, and a woman who went down into the basement of 1420 with a flashlight and stayed 11 minutes. Perry timed it because Perry is the kind of man who times things. Then he said the part that changed the shape of my week. He said, your son let them in. I asked him to say that again. He did. Bradley had a key. He walked them through both units and stood in the driveway afterward, pointing up at the roofline. Perry assumed Bradley was working for me now, which was reasonable. Bradley manages property for a living, and I am 69, and everybody's mother eventually hands something over. I drove out there that afternoon. Kishwaukee Street, 4:30, sun in my eyes. I parked a block down by the church lot, and I did not get out of the car. The rhubarb along the back fence was knee-high, thick and red at the base, ready to cut. One whole plant had been flattened. Somebody had walked straight through the middle of the row with a tape. I sat there 20 minutes. Then I drove home and made a cup of tea, and I did not call my son. That was my mistake, not a fatal one. But if I had called him that Wednesday, we would have had this fight in May in private with 2 people in the room. I told myself I was gathering facts. I was doing exactly what Delphine said I was doing. Bradley came by on Tuesday, May 5th at 10 in the morning. He never comes at 10 in the morning. He had a blue plastic folder, the kind with the pocket and the metal clasp, and he set it on the table next to the sugar bowl and did not open it for 6 minutes. He asked about my knee. He asked about the gutters. He told me Trevor had made the all-star roster. Then he opened the folder. He said it's a tax thing mostly. Rhiannon's dad had his guy look at it. He said it just puts things where they should be so nobody has to fight later. There were 4 documents in there. I only needed 1. The second page had a footer along the bottom edge, 6-point type, left justified. Fund Form 7A Revision 3 of 91. I have seen that footer more times than I have seen my own signature. And the sheet behind it was pink. Pale pink. That stock was chosen in 1991 for one reason, which is that nobody skips a page that is not white. My hands did not move. What I felt was vertigo. That is the only honest word. It is what happens when a phrase you have said your whole life suddenly sounds made up. My son had brought me my own form. I said, I'm not signing anything today. He looked at me a second too long. He said, you say today like there's a different day. Then he took the folder and left, and the storm door banged twice the way it has since 2011. I sat there 40 minutes. I never turned the page over. I did not have to. There was one more thing from that morning. Halfway through, while he was still doing the warm-up about gutters, Bradley said something that did not fit his mouth. He said, we just want it handled while you're still around. Then he stopped. Not a long stop. Half a beat, like a man who has read ahead in a script and jumped a line. I said still around, for what he said, you know. Around. Then he asked whether I had had the furnace looked at. I listened to people ask me for things for 33 years. You develop an ear. There is the way a person talks about their own money, and there is the way a person repeats somebody else's opinion about somebody else's money. The second one has a seam in it. That sentence had a seam. Bradley does not talk like that. My son says things like, get out in front of it and no sense dragging it out. He does not say, while you're still around. Somebody wrote that phrase. That night, I did the thing I do when I need my hands busy. I took the flatware out of the drawer and polished all of it, which is ridiculous because it is stainless. The bent salad fork caught in the tray divider the way it always does. So now I will tell you, in 1987, Bradley was 5 years old and Ray was painting the back bedroom, and my son took a salad fork out of that drawer and pried the lid off a gallon of eggshell semi-gloss. I kept the fork. 39 years. Somebody had written that sentence for him. I wanted to know who. On Thursday, May 21st, Perry knocked on my door at 6 in the evening, holding a bundle of rhubarb and an envelope. He apologized for the rhubarb first. He said the flattened plant had come back crooked, and he had cut what he could save. Then he handed me the envelope. It was addressed to owner of record 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street, Rockford, Illinois, postmarked Belvedere. Return address, Ostrander and Pool Attorneys at Law. Perry said it had come to the duplex 2 days before, and he had been carrying it around in his truck because he could not tell if it was junk mail. I opened it standing in my own doorway. It was short. 2 paragraphs dated May 18th, signed by an attorney named Faye Ostrander. It confirmed a closing date of Friday, July 10th, 2026. It requested a payoff figure for any mortgage of record copies of the current leases and the name of the title company I intended to use. It thanked me for my cooperation. I read it 3 times on the porch with a bundle of rhubarb under my arm. I have never listed that property. I have never spoken to a real estate agent in my life. I did not know anybody named Faye Ostrander. I had never heard of a buyer. And there is no mortgage of record because I paid the thing off in March of 2019 and framed the release. Somebody had sold my building. Somebody had negotiated a price on it, taken money for it, and set a day to hand over the keys. And they had a date on the calendar. Perry asked if I was all right. I told him I was going to need him to save every piece of mail that comes to that address. I did not call Bradley. I did not call a lawyer either, and people always ask why. So here is the honest answer. A lawyer would have charged me $200 an hour to tell me to go look at the public record. I know how to go look at the public record. That was my entire working life. At the fund, when a member came in furious swearing his hours were wrong, we did not argue with him. Arguing is theater. We pulled the file. So I made tea and got out a legal pad and wrote down everything that can be checked by a person with no special standing and no attorney. Deeds, mortgages, liens, anything recorded against my property, all of it public, all of it indexed by name, all of it sitting in a county office 11 minutes from my house. Then I sat in the dark kitchen and thought about Delmar Fitch. I thought about how he came to my counter with a form somebody else had filled out for him, and how sure he was, and how the person who handed him that form had never once intended for him to read the back of it. Friday morning, I put on the gray jacket I used to wear to trustee meetings. It still fits, which surprised me and nobody else. The Winnebago County Recorder opens at 8. I was there at 8:02. Before I tell you what I found, let me ask you something, because I know a lot of you have been here. Have you ever had to go pull a document yourself because the person who should have told you the truth would not tell me in the comments? And if you want to see how this one lands, stay with me and subscribe. The recorder's office is at 404 Elm Street in the County Administration Building, 2nd floor, past a hallway that smells like floor wax and toner. There is a public terminal. Anyone may use it. You do not sign anything, show identification, or explain yourself to a soul. That is the entire point of a public record. And most people go their whole lives without ever touching one. I searched by name. Redding. My own name came up first, the way it should. The 1994 warranty deed, the 2019 release of mortgage. Then there was a third entry, and it was from this year. Document number 2026 0143992, recorded Tuesday, April 21, 2026 at 10:47 in the morning. Instrument type memorandum of real estate contract. Let me explain what that is, because I did not know either. When somebody signs a contract to buy property and the closing is months out, the buyer can record a short notice that the contract exists. It transfers nothing. It puts the world on notice. Any title company that searches the property finds it and stops cold. It is 3 pages. I read all 3 standing up because the chairs were on the other side of the room, and I did not trust my legs to get me back. The memorandum described a contract dated Saturday, April 11, 2026. Seller Bradley R. Redding. Purchaser Del Vaughn. Property 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street. Purchase price $139,000. Earnest money $5,000 deposited with Ostrander and Pool. Closing on or before Friday, July 10th, 2026. And then down in the recitals, one line I read maybe 9 times. Seller warrants that seller is the owner of record. My son signed that. His signature is on page 3. And it is the same signature that is on the back of my Christmas cards with the R, sitting up too tall. I paid $14 for a certified copy. The clerk asked if I was all right. I said I was fine, and I asked her for a receipt, and she gave me one. Then I sat in my car in the lot on Elm Street for 20 minutes. I did not cry. I did what I have done for 33 years with a file that does not make sense. I started at the top, read it again, and put a number in the margin of every page. On the second pass, the real thing landed, and it was not the money. It was the order. He sold my building on April 11th. He asked me to sign it over on May 5th. He never once treated my yes as something he needed. Attached to the memorandum as an exhibit were 2 pages of the contract itself, the signature page and the page before it. That is not always how it is done. Plenty of memorandums are bare bones because nobody wants the price sitting in the public record. Faye Ostrander recorded more than she had to. She had a client who had handed $5,000 to a man she had never met, and she wanted the paper trail thick. Paragraph 12 was on that page. Liquidated damages. I read it 4 times in the car. Stripped of the legal language, it said this: if the seller fails to convey marketable title on or before the closing date, the seller shall pay the purchaser a sum equal to the earnest money $5,000 as liquidated damages together with the purchaser's actual title, examination, and survey costs. There was no financing contingency and no inspection contingency. Bradley had signed a clean contract because a clean contract gets a better price and a faster close, and he was in a hurry. And there was nothing in it about me, not one word, no provision making the deal subject to the seller getting title from his mother, no escape hatch, nothing that made his obligation depend on my signature, my mood, or how long I lived. He had promised a stranger in writing that he already owned my building. I sat with a very strange feeling. I did not have to do anything. I did not have to sue him. I did not have to call the police, and I never once considered it. I did not have to tell Faye Ostrander anything about my family. All I had to do was not sign. July 10th would come whether I was angry or not. That turned out to be the hardest thing I have ever done. On Friday, May 29th, I mailed Faye Ostrander a letter. It was one sentence. I am the owner of record of 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street, and the property is not for sale. I signed it, put my phone number under my name, and enclosed a copy of my 1994 deed and my 2019 release, certified mail return receipt. $9 and change at the Auburn Street Post Office, and the woman behind the counter told me to have a blessed day. I did not mention my son. I want you to understand that choice. I could have written 3 pages. I could have explained the pension, the folder, the pink page, the nod at the table. I could have made her feel sorry for me. None of it would have changed one fact she needed. At the fund, the letters that worked were always the short ones. You state what is true, and then you stop. People fill in the rest, and what they fill in is usually worse than anything you would have written. She called me Saturday morning at 9. She sounded like a woman who had had a very long week. She said, "Mrs. Redding, thank you for writing back. You're the 3rd person I've called about this property, and the other 2 were my own client. I asked her whether she was going to sue my son." There was a pause, and then she said something I have thought about ever since. She said, "I don't need to. He already agreed to what happens." I asked if there was anything she needed from me. She said, "No, ma'am. Just don't sign anything." I told her I could manage that. Then I hung up and stood in my kitchen a while, and what I felt was tired. Sunday lunch, May 31st. 2 days later. Dale sat at the head of the table. That was Ray's chair. Nobody has used it since 2009. I have never made a rule about it. I have never said one word about it. And for 17 years, everybody has just gone around it the way you go around a wet patch on a floor. Dale pulled it out, sat down, and set his phone face down beside his plate. He talked about estate planning the way other men talk about tires. He said the thing people your age always get wrong is waiting. He said probate takes 18 months in this county and eats 1/3 of everything, which is not true, and I let it go. Charlene said we're only trying to help Mom. She calls me Mom. She has for years. I never asked her to stop, and I never will now because it would look like the wrong kind of loss. Then Bradley said, next month we'll bring everything at once. All of it, one sitting, and you sign and it's done. I said, what day? He said the 28th. Last Sunday, like always. I got up and wrote it on the calendar by the refrigerator. 28th. Everyone watched me do it. I believe they read that as compliance. Rhiannon smiled down at her plate. I called Delphine that night. I told her all of it. The memorandum, the $14 paragraph, 12 the letter to the attorney. She listened to the entire thing without interrupting, which for her is an achievement. Then she said, Mom, you have built a beautiful file. She said, have you built a sentence? I told her I was working on it. She said, work faster. You've got 4 weeks. Josie stayed to help with the dishes that night. She is 15 and she does that sometimes when the house has been loud. She dried and I washed, and neither of us said much for a while. Then she said, Grandma, can I ask you something weird? I said, always. She said, back in March, Grandpa Dale took me to the paint store on East State. Trevor had a game, and Dad rode along, and I was in the back seat with the drop cloths. She said they were practicing something. I asked what she meant. She said, Grandpa said a sentence, and Dad said it back, twice, like lines in a play. I put down the pan I was holding. She looked at the towel, and then she said it. She said, Grandpa told him to say, sign it all over now while you're still around to watch us enjoy it. I asked if she was sure. She said yes, because Grandpa corrected him. Dad said sign it over, and Grandpa said no, say sign it all over. He said don't say transfer. Transfer sounds like lawyers. All over sounds like a gift. She kept drying the same bowl. Then she said, Grandma, is it a gift? I have spent my life being careful with words in front of children. I was not going to lie to a 15-year-old at my own sink. I said, no, honey, it isn't. She nodded like she had already known and only wanted a grown-up to say it out loud. Then she said, I told Mom I heard it. Mom said I was being dramatic. She was not finished. She said there had been another one at Christmas on the back steps. Grandma Charlene had my newsletter and was reading numbers off it. Josie said she stood in the doorway with a garbage bag and neither of them looked up. So now I knew who had written the line. I still did not know what Dale believed he was owed, because a man does not rehearse a sentence like that in a pickup truck unless he has already decided somebody owes him. Dale Trafhagen drove for a freight outfit for 26 years. His pension came out of a multi-employer plan, too. Different trade, different trust, same idea. Employers pay in by the hour, the fund invests it, and at the end, you get a check every month until you die. In 2015, his plan filed as critical and declining. That is a real category, and it means the trustees have told the federal government the money runs out inside 20 years. The letter came on Friday, February 19, 2016. I know the date because Dale has told that story at 3 family gatherings, and he tells it the same way every time, which is how, a man has worn a groove in something. He read it out loud at his kitchen table in McChesney Park, twice. Charlene was there. Rhiannon was there with a baby on her hip. $2,140 a month cut to $1,519. 29%. Not a delay, not a freeze. A cut to a man who was already 63 and already retired and had already bought the ranch house on the strength of the first number. There was a meeting at a Union Hall on Kishwaukee Street that March, a Tuesday night. He stood up and asked how a promise gets smaller. He says nobody answered him. I believe him. He and Charlene lived in Tucson until 2018. He first sat at this table in the spring of 2019 after they moved back. He ate 2 pieces of rhubarb pie and told me the crust was better than his mother's. Then he asked me what I drew a month. I laughed and changed the subject, and I thought he was only being a working man about it. He does not hate me. That is the part people get wrong. He thinks I got lucky, and he thinks luck is supposed to be shared out. On Wednesday, June 10th, I got a letter from my own pension fund. Cream envelope blue logo, the same stock I ordered in 2006. It was addressed to me as a participant, and it said what those letters say. On June 5th, the fund received a submission requesting a change of payee and a redirection of direct deposit on my monthly benefit transmitted by a third party. Fund policy is to notify the participant in writing of any such submission. Then the operative sentence. The fund cannot honor an assignment of benefits and will not process a change of payee. Any such document is void as to the fund. Signed, Gwen Sartorius Plan, Administrator. I hired Gwen in 2004. She was 29, she had a 2-year degree and a way of reading a document that you cannot teach, and I made the trustees give her $4 an hour more than they wanted to. I called her. She said, I was hoping you'd call. I couldn't call you first, you know that. I said, I knew. She said, Sylvia, whoever put this together, used our form. I said I had seen the footer. She said they used the March 1991 revision. They pulled it off some archive site. We haven't printed that version since 2013. Then she laughed once, and it was not a nice laugh, and she said the paragraph on the back is yours. I asked her for something. I asked her to send me a clean original, both sides on the pink stock, along with a copy of her letter. She asked what for. I said so that somebody can read it out loud. She did not ask who. She said she would overnight it. Then she said one more thing, and it stayed with me all the way to the 28th. She said, Sylvia, whoever mailed this in, put a stamped envelope inside for the reply. Somebody wanted that check moving fast. Bradley called me at 9 o'clock that night. He did not say hello. He said, what did you do? I said I had not done anything which was true, and which is the most infuriating sentence in the English language when the other person knows it is true. He said the fund had contacted him. Somebody there had called the number on the submission and told him the packet would not be processed. He wanted to know if I had made a phone call. I said no. I said they notified me because I am the participant. Then he changed pitch, and this is where it got ugly in the specific way that family gets ugly. He said, do you have any idea what I'm carrying? He told me. All of it in about 90 seconds, like a man who had been waiting a long time to. There was a note, $96,000, 12.9% balloon due Monday, August 3rd. It is secured by 2 houses on Vale Street that he picked up at a county sale in 2024 for $18,500 total. He had put a roof on one of them. He had not put a roof on the other. He said, I have a plan and everything in my plan works and you are the only piece that doesn't. I asked him one question. I said, Bradley, what day did you sign the contract to sell my duplex? The line went quiet. I counted it. 4 seconds. Then he said, I don't know what you're talking about. 33 years behind a counter teaches you that nobody honest needs 4 seconds. He hung up. He called back 9 minutes later and asked whether I was still making the pie for the 28th. Rhiannon came by alone that Saturday with a container of chicken soup. It was 91 degrees outside. She put it in my refrigerator and sat down at my kitchen table without being asked, which she had not done in 17 years. She said, I know what this looks like. I said I was listening. And then she told me about the curtain. She told me about November of 2018. She told me she was holding my coat and my purse, and she had already put 400 miles on her car driving me back and forth. And she heard a nurse ask if anybody else should be listed, and she heard me say, my son's wife isn't on any of the paperwork. She said I sat in the parking garage and cried for 20 minutes. Then I came up and read you the dinner menu. Her eyes went red. Her voice went flat, which is what happens to her instead of shaking. She said, I just wanted to count as family. 3 seconds. That is how long it lasted, and every bit of it was true, and I felt it in my chest, like a hand pressing. Then she put both palms on my table. She said, so sign it, and then you'll see how we take care of you. And there it was. I said, Rhiannon, those 2 things don't belong in the same conversation. She stood up and got her keys. At the door, she told me the soup was low sodium and that I should heat it slow. Both things she said to me that afternoon were honest. Only one of them was an offer. I want you to notice which one came second. On the 17th, Bradley texted me a list. He does that. He plans a Sunday lunch the way he plans a job walk. Him, Rhiannon, Josie, Trevor, Dale, and Charlene. And then, in his words, might have one more person stopping by real quick, nothing to worry about. I read that line 4 times. Then I did something I had not done in 20 years. I invited people who do not have to be there. I called Margie Salveson next door. Margie is 74 and has lived 11 feet from me since 1995. She was at Ray's funeral. She has a key to my house, and I have a key to hers. I said, "Margie, come to lunch Sunday." She said, "Is something happening?" I said, "Probably." I said, "I would like somebody at that table who is not related to anybody." She said she would bring a Jell-O salad, which is a sentence with more history behind it than I have time for. Then I called Perry Lindquist. I have never once invited my tenant to a meal in 9 years. He got very formal on the phone and asked what he should bring, and I told him rhubarb and I heard him relax. Friday night, Rhiannon texted, "Is there room in the driveway for someone who's just coming to notarize in and out 10 minutes? So there it was in writing. I typed 3 answers and deleted 2. I sent "Tell them to park on the street," then I counted chairs. 9 at the table with the leaf in. 10 people would be on my property Sunday. I set 9 plates. Saturday, I made 2 pies. I cut Perry's rhubarb myself in the heat and got a scrape on my forearm from the rail Ray rebuilt twice. Then I washed all 8 settings of the flatware and laid them out on a dish towel. The bent fork went at my place. It always does. But that Saturday, I put it there on purpose, and there is a difference. I got a craft envelope out of the desk, the 9x12 kind with the clasp, and I put 3 things inside it. Gwen's letter, and behind it, the clean Form 7A she had sent front and back, pink page and all. The certified copy of document 2026-004, all 3 pages, and the exhibit with paragraph 12 with my pencil marks still in the margin. I did not put a speech in there. I never wrote one. Delphine called at 9. She was walking into a night shift, and she talked to me from a parking ramp in Madison. She asked what I was going to say. I told her the truth. It was the first time I had said it out loud. I said, "Honey, for 33 years, I believed that if I explained a thing well enough with the right paper in front of me, people would not go do the wrong thing anyway. I said they do it anyway, and I still cannot stop preparing." She said then, "Don't explain tomorrow. Let the paper talk." I put the envelope under my own placemat and went to bed at 10:30, and I slept, which surprised me. Before I take you into that dining room, tell me one thing. If you had been at my table that Sunday, which chair would you have wanted? Say so in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss how it ends. Sunday, June 28th, noon. The east windows in my dining room take the light straight on at that hour. The table had the leaf in and my mother's cloth over it. 9 plates. Ham, green beans, scalloped potatoes, Margie's Jell-O salad, and both rhubarb pies already sitting out. I put the pie on the table before the meal instead of after. Nobody said a word about it. Charlene looked at it twice. Trevor took a drumstick with his hand, and his mother said his name. Dale sat at the head of the table again. He did it faster this time. At 6 minutes past 12, a silver Camry parked at the curb across from Margie's mailbox. A woman stayed in the driver's seat, window down. She had a zippered case in her lap and a stamp on the dashboard, and she did not get out. Margie saw her and looked at me. I gave her a small shake of the head. Charlene said we'll do the paperwork after we eat so nobody gets indigestion. She laughed at her own joke and nobody joined her. Perry Lindquist ate very carefully and said the green beans were good. Margie asked Josie about driver's education. Josie answered in about 9 words and kept watching the far end of the table. Nobody talked about the Camry. Everybody sees a car at the curb, and the longer nobody names it, the louder it gets. Bradley set the blue folder on the empty chair beside him. Not on the floor, not out in the truck. On a chair at my table like a 10th guest. He did not wait until after we ate. He waited 11 minutes. Then he pushed his plate forward 2 inches, took the folder off the chair, and slid the stack across the table toward me. It went through the ring of water under Trevor's glass, and the bottom sheet came up dark along one corner. 4 documents. I could see all of them from where I sat, and I knew everyone. Assignment of benefits on top. Under that, the pink-back change of payee. Fund Form 7A. Under that, a direct deposit authorization with a routing number already filled in, and it was not my bank. And on the bottom, a quit claim deed for 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street. with my name typed in as Granner and my son's name typed in as Grantee. The room went quiet, even Trevor. Bradley put both hands flat on my tablecloth, and he said it the way you say a thing you have practiced in a truck. He said, "Sign it all over now while you're still around to watch us enjoy it." Rhiannon smiled, not a nervous smile, not an apology. Her chin came up half an inch, and she looked at me the way you look at a scoreboard. Margie set her glass down hard enough to hear. Perry looked at his plate and kept it there. I set down my fork. It was the salad fork with the bent left tine, the one my son ruined on a paint can in 1987, and it clicked against the china the way it has for 39 years. For 2 full seconds, I could not speak. Then I heard my own voice, and it was the voice from behind the counter. I said one sentence. "That form doesn't do what you think it does." Bradley said, "You're not a lawyer." Dale set down his knife. He said, "She's right, son. She just did the paperwork over there." 33 years, and that is the sentence. I have been called worse by better. Charlene said nobody's trying to upset anybody. Margie said then, "Why is there a woman in a car outside?" Nobody answered her either. I did not argue. I have never in my life won an argument by arguing, and I had had 4 weeks to remember it. I reached under my placemat and took out the craft envelope, and I slid it not to Bradley, but down the length of the table to Dale. I said, "Would you read this out loud?" "My eyes are worse than yours. That is not true. My eyes are fine. I own readers I do not need. But I have watched men take a document out of a woman's hand for 33 years, and there is exactly one thing they will not do. They will not refuse to read something in front of an audience when they believe it is going to help them." Dale took the envelope. He unclasped it. He put on his glasses, the drugstore kind, and he shook the pages out onto the tablecloth next to the potatoes. Bradley said, "Dale, you don't have to." Dale said, "No. Let's hear what she's got." He held the first page out at arm's length the way far-sighted men do, and he began to read. He got 3 lines in before his voice slowed down. He read Gwen's letter first, and he read all of it because he had started. He read that on June 5th, the fund received a submission requesting a change of payee and a redirection of direct deposit on my monthly benefit transmitted by a third party. He read that the fund cannot honor an assignment of benefits and will not process a change of payee. He read any such document is void as to the fund. Nobody moved. Charlene said void, meaning what Dale turned the page because there was another one, and it was pink on the back, and he had printed the front of that same page off the internet in March. He read paragraph 4. Benefits under this plan may not be assigned, alienated, garnished, pledged, or transferred, and the plan will not recognize any instrument purporting to do so. 29 United States Code Section 1056, subsection D, paragraph 1. He stopped. Perry Lindquist said very quietly, "It means nobody can take it, not even if she wanted to hand it over." I said my second sentence of the afternoon. I said I wrote that paragraph in 1991. Josie's head came up off her plate. She looked at her father, not at me. Dale looked at the back of the page, and then at me. And for the first time since I have known the man, he did not have anything ready. Bradley laughed. One short sound with no air in it. Then he looked down at the bottom document. The quitclaim deed. And I watched him do the arithmetic I had already done in a parking lot on Elm Street 5 weeks earlier. I took 1 page out of that envelope and slid it back across the table to my son. Just one. Face up. Page 3 of document 2026, Year 1 Frame for 39, certified by the Winnebago County Recorder, recorded Tuesday, April 21st at 10:47 in the morning. His signature under the word seller. He did not pick it up. He stood and his chair went over backward onto my floor and Trevor jumped. He said, "You went digging." He said, "You went behind my back on your own son." I said it cost $14 and anybody can do it. That is all I said. I did not raise my voice, and I did not need to because he was doing that for both of us. He said I had been spying. He said I had never trusted him with anything, not once, not since he was 21. He said a mother is supposed to help. Trevor put his hands in his lap. Rhiannon said his name twice. Dale said, "Sit down." And then Bradley's phone, lying face down beside his plate, started buzzing against the wood. Everybody looked at it. It had flipped partway over from the vibration, and the whole table could read the screen. Ostrander and Poole. Bradley did not move. I said, "Answer it." Rhiannon reached across to silence it, and her thumb slid off the edge of the screen. The call connected on speaker, and 9 people in my dining room heard the buyer's attorney say, "Good afternoon." Faye Ostrander had no idea she had an audience. She said, "Mr. Redding, this is the 4th time I have called you in 4 days." Then she went through it the way lawyers do, flat in order like a woman reading off a delivery manifest. Contract dated April 11th. His signature as seller. Memorandum recorded April 21st. A title commitment ordered Monday, May 4th that came back showing the owner of record as Sylvia J. Redding. A notice of default sent certified to his address on Wednesday, June 24th, signed for at that address. Bradley said, "My mother is going to sign," and Faye Ostrander said the thing that ended it. She said, "Paragraph 12 isn't conditional, Mr. Redding. If you can't convey title by July 10th, you owe my client $5,000 plus his title and survey costs." Bradley said it again. He said, "My mother is going to sign." She said, "Your mother answered me in writing on May 29th. Rhiannon started to cry. It is a particular kind of crying aimed inward, the kind that asks a room to come manage it. Charlene said everyone needed to calm down. Dale folded his glasses and put them in his shirt pocket. He said, "Then the law's wrong." Nobody answered him. I stood up and cut a piece of pie and put it on Trevor's plate because he was 11 years old and he had been sitting very still for a long time. Out at the curb, the silver Camry started up and pulled away. She charged $45 for the trip. Bradley paid it. July 10th came on a Friday and nothing happened, which is what a failed closing looks like. Bradley paid Delvon $5,000 in liquidated damages and $1,340 for the title work and the survey. Faye Ostrander mailed me a copy of the release unasked with a note that said, "Thank you for your letter." He sold one of the Vale Street houses to cover it, the one without the roof at a loss. The $96,000 note still came due August 3rd. I know he made it because he is still driving the same truck. I do not know what it cost him. I have not asked. Dale has not called me. Charlene sent a 4-paragraph text about how much confusion there had been and how nobody meant anything by it. Rhiannon sent 2 words, "I'm sorry." 3 weeks later, she sent, "Will you think about it?" Margie brought over a carton of eggs from a woman at her church and did not ask me a single question, which is the finest thing anybody did for me all summer. Perry raised his own rent by $20. I did not ask him to. He just started paying it, and I have not been able to talk him out of it. I sent my son 1 page, not a lawyer's letter. Mine typed on the computer Delphine set up printed at the public library for a dime. I wrote that I have granted no person authority over my benefit, my accounts, or my property, and that I do not intend to. I wrote that all correspondence about 1418 and 1420 Kishwaukee Street comes to me directly, and that anybody representing otherwise is representing something false. I wrote that Sunday lunch is still the last Sunday of the month, and that he and his family are welcome at it, and that nothing gets signed at my table. Not ever again. And at the bottom, I typed his own sentence back to him, word for word. Sign it all over now while you're still around to watch us enjoy it, then 1 line under it. I'm still here, Bradley. You're the one counting days. He has not answered that page. He came to the July lunch 8 and left early. He said the beans were good, which is what his father used to say when he could not think of anything else. Josie asked whether she could come learn the pie. I said Sunday afternoons and to bring a hair tie. The bent fork is still in the drawer. I could straighten it. 20 seconds with a pair of pliers, and it would lie flat like the other 7. I am not going to. It is not a trophy. It is just true, and I have gotten to an age where I would rather have the true one at my own place. I keep a copy of Form 7A in the sideboard now, pink side up in with the napkins, not to make a point to anybody, because I want to be able to put my hand on it. Delmar Fitch died in 2004. He never knew a word of that paragraph was written for him, and he would not have cared, and it protected him anyway for 13 more years. People will tell you that love means letting your children decide things while you are still around to enjoy watching them enjoy it. Here's what I know instead. The words I wrote in 1991 to protect a roofer, I met exactly once, turned out to be strong enough to protect me too. And you do not have to raise your voice to say no, you only have to know precisely what you are holding. The last Sunday in July, I set 8 plates. Delphine drove down from Madison. Margie came. Perry brought rhubarb, stayed for coffee, and told a long story about a printing press that caught fire in 1989. Josie made the crust herself, and it was better than mine, and I told her so in front of everybody. Trevor asked why Grandpa Dale wasn't there. His father said he was busy. Bradley came. He sat where he always sits. We talked about the Ocampo kids and the trampoline and whether the porch rail needs doing again, and it was not warm and it was not war either. I set the bent fork at my own place the way I have since 1987. Nobody put anything on that table but food. That's my story. One Sunday, one form, one paragraph I wrote in 1991. If this made you want to check whose name is on your papers, do it this week. Share this with someone who needs it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.